Hello and good evening to you. Welcome. This is Ghana Tonight. We are live from a news hub at the Subway and also live on TV on Facebook, DSTV channel 279. We're all across the world on 3news.com. Tonight, we delve into the Supreme Court's verdict on the controversial vacant parliamentary seats case and the various reactions that followed soon after the court gave its very, very short judgment earlier today. But does this bring finality to this outside of the courts? Because legally, yes. But what happens next? That's the conversation tonight. Also, we explore the implications of the Supreme Court's judgment on the immediate future of parliamentary proceedings and government business before the House. Stay with us here on Ghana Tonight. We have a full-blown conversation on this matter. As always, we remain your election command center. Ghana Freedom Party fails to successfully file a candidate for the December 7th poll. The Electoral Commission has been making some significant announcements in that regard and more. We have it all to unpack tonight. Guess what? If you did not catch the Electoral Commission's announcement of this, if your cost picture is still going to be on the ballot paper from what we understand. And the Electoral Commission has an explanation for that. As to those who are going to vote for the deceased Ecuador, what happens to their vote? We'll have a conversation on that tonight. As always, you're an integral part of the conversation. Let's hear from you. The hashtag we're using is Ghana Tonight on Facebook and on X. Let's get talking. Let's settle for Ghana Briefs.
The Majority Leader Alexander Apenyomaken has called on the Speaker of Parliament Alban Baldwin to reconvene the House to resume its duties. Following the Supreme Court's recent ruling in favour of his suit, Apenyomaken expressed that the decision represents a significant triumph for constitutional democracy and the rule of law. In his statement, Apenyomaken emphasized that while they await the full written reasoning from the court, its decision on the constitutional question is clear and binding. The Electoral Commission has settled the controversy over ballot order consents for the 2024 elections. Following the disqualification of Philip Apiakubi, the EC confirmed that the original ballot order will remain unchanged, averting potential chaos and protests over a reballoting or position reshuffle.
We are here to inform you of the Commission's decision to maintain the presidential ballot as it is. We are almost 90% complete with the printing of presidential ballots. The Commission would like to inform you that the printing would proceed on the current ballot as is, in the interest of time and to save this country millions of cedis.
Flag bearer of the NPP, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, has promised people of Obuasi West of setting up community mining schemes when voted into power. The community mining schemes, according to the flag bearer, will ensure that miners in the Obuasi enclave engage in responsible mining.
Your mama licenses, your mama community mining schemes, areas above we are use the negotiate na community mining and small scale miners.
The next NDC government is committed to transforming Ghana's creative industry, beginning with a new national theatre in Kumasi to support content creators in the region. The plan also includes modernizing the Accra National Theatre with state-of-the-art equipment to serve as a creative hub for artists nationwide. John Mahama announced this at an engagement with creative artists in Kumasi.
In the arts village, no, baby, pursue your production, ubenya set no. And also a generating revenue, a discovery bank, and it will help to lower cost of production for your filmmakers. National Film Theatre, since China for boy you see Rollins Abreso, everything there is not been rehabilitated. Into kwan na ɛkɔ fam nneɛma bebree asɛe wɔ hɔ oh yeah exhibition and I be wɔ hɔ a sometimes curtains no you can't draw the curtains stage no asɛe nneɛma bebree asɛe wɔ mu nti mmerɛ no so sɛ yɛsiesie hɔ yie sɛdeɛ ɛbɛyɛ a ɛbɛtumi aboa the creative industry.
Financial expert Joe Jackson warns that Ghana's regulated financial institutions face an existential threat due to the pervasive impact of illegal mining in the country. Joe Jackson's comments come on the back of Bank of Ghana's new directive mandating financial institutions to address climate-related financial risks.
What would happen to us financial institutions if there's a famine, if the rains fail, if there's a flood? How will it affect the institutions and the people we lend to? How would it affect our areas where we work in? And so this is fantastic to ask all of us to submit a plan based on the amount of risk we estimate and what we are going to do about that risk. Is good, and the central bank has done a great thing.
Oh, there's more news on 3news.com. Kindly make some time and visit 3news.com. Coming up next here on Ghana Tonight. Remember, we're live on 3FM 92.7 as well. Up next, we delve into the Supreme Court's verdict on the controversial vacant parliamentary seats case and the various reactions that have followed soon after the court gave its judgment earlier today. Well, it's a very unexpectedly short decision communicated by the courts. We're awaiting the full details of the reasoning behind the Supreme Court's ruling today. But the Supreme Court earlier today delivered its ruling on the vexed matter of whether 4 members of parliament who have filed nominations with the Electoral Commission to contest the December polls in colours different from those they came into this 8th parliament in was lawful or otherwise. The apex court declares that the Speaker of Parliament's declaration of the 4 seats vacant is unconstitutional. Here is the Chief Justice, Gertrude Tokono, earlier today.
By court, in a majority decision of 5-2, Lovelace Johnson JSC and Amadou Tanko JSC dissenting on the issue of jurisdiction, the plaintiff's action succeeds. The full reasons and orders of the court shall be filed with the registrar by close of day tomorrow, 13th November 2024. This is the judgment of the court.
Most grateful.
By court, in a majority decision of 5-2, Lovelace Johnson JSC and Amadou Tanko JSC dissenting on the issue of jurisdiction, the plaintiff's action succeeds. The full reasons and orders of the court shall be filed with the registrar by close of day tomorrow, 13th November 2024. This is the judgment of the court.
Most grateful.
Well, so that's the Chief Justice there, delivering the decision by the courts, the full ruling and the details of it, the reasoning behind those who dissented and those who decided to go according to what Alexander Benjamin was demanding of the courts will be made available tomorrow. Dennis Paberi Wadam Esquire is joining me in studio right now. I want to understand the composition and how things played out. Dennis, what do we know?
Well, so just like you heard in the sound bites, the decision was a 5-2 decision, 5 in favor of the plaintiff, and then the 2 dissenting. So the 5 that's ruled in favor of the plaintiff are as follows: the Chief Justice herself was the presiding Justice Gertrude Tokono, Justice Mariama Owusu, Justice Kwame Asiedu, Justice Yaudako, and Justice Ernest Gao there are those who ruled in favor of the plaintiff.
I see. So these were the ones in favor of the plaintiff. We are told that 2 of them dissented on the matter of jurisdiction. And this is important because if you recall, when the Speaker of Parliament made his application to vacate the Supreme Court's decision, these were the justices who sat on that matter, on that application. And the issue of jurisdiction came up. And they all ruled in favor of to say that the Supreme Court had jurisdiction to hear the matter. Indeed. So it's not surprising that we are having all these people, rule in favor as regards jurisdiction. So these were the 5.
Yes, these were the 5
who sat on the Speaker's application
to vacate the Supreme Court's earlier decision to suspend the Speaker's ruling.
Right, and this time they went in the same direction.
Yes, because the lawyer for the Speaker of Parliament had made the argument that the Supreme Court did not have jurisdiction to entertain the matter. So the Supreme Court, in determining that application, had to make a case, and they did indicate that the court had jurisdiction to hear the matter. It was on that reason that they went in to make the determination of whether or not the application had any merit in it. Eventually, they ruled that the application did not have any merit, and they dismissed it. So now we are told that when the full bench sat on the substantive case, these 2 dissented on the issue of jurisdiction. Even though we do not have the full ruling and the reasoning yet, what it does mean is that they are saying that the appropriate forum for the matter in contention should not have been the Supreme Court. So that's why they dissented on the matter of jurisdiction. So this is the composition as we have it, and the breakdown. And
it's important, the underlying analysis that you put out there. So the 2 who dissented were those who were, for the layman's understanding, added to the 5.
To hear the substantive
case. The substantive case.
Yes.
So these 2 are essentially new on this case with relative to those 5 who sat on the Speaker's application.
So there was a different panel that sat on the Speaker's application. There were 5 justices. So those ones are here.
These are the 5?
Yes. And the matter of jurisdiction came up as part of that application.
And they
decided, and they agreed that, yes, the Supreme Court has jurisdiction to hear the matter. The Chief Justice took time to explain how the Supreme Court jurisdiction was properly invoked. And the argument that was made that it ought to have been in the High Court, she explained that even if it had gone to the High Court and there was still some confusion or some rivalry meaning placed on the provision in question, proceedings ought to have been stayed in the High Court and the matter brought to the Supreme Court for interpretation. And on that score, they did not see why the argument that the Supreme Court did not have jurisdiction in the matter did not lie. So they made that decision. However, when they went into the substantive matter with a 7-member panel, these were the 2 new justices who were added. And now we are told they dissented on the matter of jurisdiction.
I see. And while we wait for the full details of their ruling, let's hear from Alexander Afenyo-Markin, who spoke after the court's decision today. Take a look.
Moment for all of us to rally around the choice we made in 1992, democracy. Democracy requires decency, and that is the path the MPP majority caucus took to ensure that we do right to the law. Nothing more except to say that we expect our colleagues on the other side, including Mr. Speaker, to respect the outcome of this case so that we move on as a nation.
Well, so the number of persons who are going to be joining us on this particular issue, Martin Pebo is private legal practice, going to be joining us in a bit. Also, we're trying to get through to one of the lawyers for Alexander Afenyo-Markin, plus the executive director of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs, Dr. Rashid Rahman. All of them are going to be joining me on a conversation on this particular matter going forward. Now, there has, it can be safe to say that a legal resolution to this matter, but beyond the court's ruling today, what next? That's the fundamental question. Now, the Attorney General, Godfrey Yeboah-Dame, also spoke to the media after this ruling in court earlier today, indicating that, in his view, the Supreme Court had to bring finality to this particular issue for future reference. Take a look.
For me, it's very important that the Supreme Court ruled upon this matter, because it is something that had been occurring in this country. The tendency for it to occur really was there. The tendency for it to occur again was there. it's necessary, or it was necessary, that the Supreme Court came to this clear conclusion and determination of the matter, the meaning of Article 97, Clause 1, paragraphs G and H. And I think we must all respect it.
Jogate, also lawyer for Alexander Apenyo-Markin, also spoke to the media, specifically indicating why, even though the Supreme Court may have ruled on this matter, it doesn't wholly then signify a path of rightness. Take a look.
The fact that the Supreme Court interprets the Constitution does not mean that they are above anybody. In fact, there are judges sitting on the bench. One of them is my classmate. My juniors are on the bench. But once they go and sit there, even if it's my own child sitting there, I cannot but bow and give the person respect, not for the person, but for the office and for the law. And we expect every other Ghanaian to also respect the law. We don't all agree on what is said and what is done. As far as I'm concerned, today democracy has won, constitutionalism has won, and nobody has lost.
Well, so then it's after this, Alexander Apenyo-Markin issued a statement, which we're going to get into shortly.
Yes,
but let me welcome Martin Kpebo, is private legal practitioner, one of the foremost human rights lawyers we have in this country. Counsel, good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, evening.
Hello. Hello, Lawyer Martin Kpebo. While we try to reconnect with Lawyer Martin Kpebo right now, just remind you as well that we're live on 3FM 92.7. Now, can you hear me now, Counsel?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. Now, while we await the details and also the full ruling of the justices of the Supreme Court on this matter by tomorrow midday, all things being equal, for the Attorney General, to the extent that this incident of cross-carpeting could happen again in the future, it was very necessary that the Supreme Court interprets and rules on Article 97(1) G and H to bring finality, so-called, to this matter. Is it one that you agree with?
Not exactly. You see, the circumstances under which this case went to the Supreme Court are different. And this particular case, it was so clear that these persons had cross-carpet. So the case would have gone to the High Court. So I don't particularly agree with him, except that, like I keep saying, because in law we have different schools of thought. They are using their own school, and they belong to that school of thought. That's how come they will say it's good it went to the Supreme Court.
Hello?
The normal way, considering the fact of this case, would have been for it to go to the High Court under Article. If the High Court judge felt that they are not matter to the Supreme Court under Article 130, Clause 2. So the Attorney General is happy, but that shouldn't be right. We don't develop a democracy this way because these facts are clear. Look, today as we speak, Esiama is MPP. Today as we speak, Kojo Asante of the MPP filed to be independent, contrary to Article 3(9) of fails a candidate for parliamentary elections, and you also feel, you also file as an independent, you lose your seat automatically. Automatically, right? So the same for Cynthia Mamle Morrison. Okay, so this thing is so clear, but you know, they ran to the court because they know that President Kufuor was careful in selecting Supreme Court judges for appointment, people who are like-minded. So they chose that forum so that quickly they'll get a decision in their favor.
I see. But the provisions of Article 97(1) G and H, from the understanding that I've got over the period that this matter has been traveling, are designed, Counsel, to safeguard the principles of party loyalty and some sort of political stability. So if this 97(1) G and H cannot check cross-carpeting, then which law can in our books?
Good. So what it is that the historical meaning being put on 97 G and H Yes, I appreciate it. But if that's all that they meant, the lawmaker or the framers of the Constitution would have stated so expressly. But where they haven't done so. This means if the framers of our Constitution meant it to just mean, just crossing physically in the chamber from one side to the other, they would have stated so. But that's not the meaning at all. And if you go even to the, the Consultative Assembly proceedings, as you see that's the very limiting it to what some people are seeking to say, that it is only when you physically cross from one side of the chamber to the other side, that's from one party to the other, that's from majority to minority, or vice versa. That is when it applies. That's not true. If you read where the lawmaker was making the
And unfortunately, we have a jerky connection to Martin Pebble, private legal practitioner there. But, the Speaker of Parliament, Alfred Ocansey, Right Honourable himself, has been also espousing a position on 1971 JNH, which was the subject matter of interpretation at the Supreme Court, which the Supreme Court has given a ruling, and the futuristic implication of the decisions taken by these persons, the four of them, in the eye of this storm. But Alexander Ofenyomakin has also been talking after this, issued a statement, and it has a tone. Dennis.
Yes, so the majority leader has issued a statement, and it's in furtherance to the ruling by the Supreme Court. In that particular statement, he's calling for a truce. He's calling for cooperation from this other side of the House. That given that the Supreme Court has determined this matter, now they need to work together in the interest of Ghana, for the people that they represent. But many have been asking questions, that the tone of this letter is different from what we hear him say in his previous commentary, especially. There was an instance where he actually accused the Speaker of conspiring with the NDC caucus in Parliament on certain matters. Let's take a listen to that particular sound clip.
Speaker is setting the country on fire. Yes. Yesterday, we were disappointed with his non-reconciliatory posture during this press conference. Indeed, we, the majority caucus, call on Mr. Speaker one more time to demonstrate statesmanship. Yes. We want Mr. Speaker to know that although we were not happy on the day he was elected, some of our colleagues perhaps has seen something good in him. It wasn't the NDC that put him there for him to do the bidding of the NDC. Perhaps people felt that he could be someone who will bring all of us together. Yes. There are things that we cannot say into the camera. But Mr. Speaker is hurting democracy. Yes. What Mr. Speaker is doing is to rehearse what the NDC is likely to do should they lose power, to bring chaos, to cause confusion. How can Mr. Speaker say that he respects the Constitution, but he will not subject himself to the dictates of the judiciary? How can you say that the judiciary is in collusion, is colliding with the president, and you mention the president as a person, as an individual? How?
Well, so that was prior to today.
Yes.
It had a certain connotation. And then there's
and even yesterday, there was another sound clip where he had made comments to the effect that the MPP is bleeding under the Speaker. I mean, clearly, that's when you put all of those things together and now contrast it with what we are seeing today by way of this statement. This certainly is with a softer tone and a more persuasive argument. Statement, if you ask me. So parts of it reads that while we are with the court's full written reasoning, its decision on this constitutional question is clear and binding. The Constitution does not grant the Speaker the power to declare parliamentary seats vacant. This is a restatement of what he thinks his view on the law. Now he goes on to say that the Supreme Court's decision should not be seen as victory for one side or a defeat for another. Rather, it represents a triumph for our constitutional democracy and the rule of law. The ruling reinforces the principle that in our republic, every institution, no matter how exalted, must operate within the bounds of the Constitution. Now he begins to appeal to the various quarters. To my colleagues across the political divide, I extend the hand of friendship. The time has come for us to move beyond this episode and redirect our energies towards our primary duties. Duty, serving the good people of Ghana who elected us to represent their interests. He extends another to the Right Honorable Speaker that I reaffirm my utmost respect for your office and your distinguished service to our nation. Right. Emphasis, your distinguished service to our nation.
And this statement came in just a few hours ago?
Yes, this afternoon. This judicial interpretation of our Constitution should strengthen, not weaken, the relationship between leadership and members of the House. This is very, very important.
And the first part of what is on the screen there, you say his utmost respect for the office of the Speaker and the distinguished service of Speaker Bagwin to the nation. That's a clear departure from what we've heard from. But then again,
when you put the two side by side, but when we progress on this conversation, you begin to understand why this is very necessary, especially when we put the numbers on the table and what is likely to happen in Parliament in the coming days.
Well, too late, better late than never. Professor Ransford Jampo is a professor of political science at the University of Ghana, Legon. Professor Jampo, you've seen this statement from the Majority Leader, Alexander Afenyo-Markin. It sounds clearly one that is reconciliatory, at least based on what we have seen in that statement. Is it one that would make a significant difference as things turn out now?
Yeah, the point is, if he knows how to sound reconciliatory, he should have sounded this right from the word go before going to Parliament. He should have gone to caucus with his colleagues to let them know. You see, it is today that you are in power. Tomorrow, if you go out of power, it is shame. And at the end of the day, it is our democracy that will suffer. And so my view is that the matter has not been resolved yet, because I can anticipate and foresee some NDC members of Parliament also saying that, well, in that case, they will also not be part of Parliament to give the needed quorum for important decisions to be taken for government business to run. And all these things do not augur well for our democracy. And so I am thinking that if there are elderly men and women in the Ghanaian society, let them rise up and let them intervene, and let's see how we can address this matter. Otherwise, look, the matter has not been resolved at all.
You said the matter has not been resolved at all. Dr. Rashid Draman, Executive Director of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs, is joining us as well on Zoom right now. You agree with Professor Jampo that this matter, even though it's been resolved, appears legally, it is far from over?
Yes, Alfred, thank you very much for having me. Maybe first of all, let me commend the Majority Leader for his statement today, which, I mean, by all means, is a departure from earlier statements that you have played for all of us to hear. I think this is what, I mean, we all wanted to hear right from day one. This, as we've all said many, many times, it's a political issue and needed exactly what he is saying today: reconciliation, coming together, uniting the country, and so on and so forth. In terms of whether the matter is over or not, I just hope that now that the Supreme Court has stated clearly what its position is on this matter, I hope both sides would, including the Speaker as well, would abide by the ruling, even if anybody disagrees, because we are a country of rule of law. Maybe the NDC side might not be happy, but I think one thing that they would have to remember is that, if you are a minority party, you are a government in waiting, and you have to demonstrate that as well in everything that you do. So much as they might not agree with the Supreme Court, we only have just a few weeks to go for Ghanaians to decide who is going to lead us and who is going to be majority and minority in Parliament. So in that spirit, Alfred, I hope that we will all leave the past behind us and try to come together and do the business of our country.
Obviously shared by Alexander Afenyo-Markin in this statement, but it appears that something more than just this statement would have to take place in, as it were, extending the overtures to the other side to move on beyond this particular ruling. As you have indicated, it may have just been solved legally, but then again, they would need the other side to do business. And from the indication we're getting already, the NDC, some MPs have already started taking a position. Neil Antevanderpoel, the outgoing member of parliament for the Ododo constituency, spoke to us earlier. He had indicated that a number of his colleagues have also resolved not to partake in the business of the House if Parliament is recalled, because they are all looking at the elections and matters arising. We're going to take a listen to him, and I'll seek your thoughts on this. This is what Neil Antevanderpoel said.
It's unfortunate that the Supreme Court will give a verdict like this when it's so obvious to every Ghanaian that this particular issue do not really need any interpretation, because black and white, any class 6 child can interpret, can just read it and understand. But they decided to have an interpretation. Unfortunately, their interpretation, if you do random sampling of many Ghanaians, they will tell you they are not happy with the Supreme Court's decision. We don't care about the ruling of the Supreme Court. We will respond to a call by the Speaker of Parliament, and we will sit down and evaluate that call, look at the timing, and see whether it is convenient for us to take that decision to leave our constituencies and come and sit down in Parliament to do government business. I can say this is the decision of many of us on our platform. From the discussions we've had so far since the verdict came out, majority, close to 99% of us, have decided not to respond to any call.
Well, so, Dr. Asitraban, there you have it. What then has to be done beyond this statement? Because it's clear what Neil Antevanderpoel is saying there.
Well, I think, tempers might be very high now. I mean, this is an emotional issue, Alfred, and I can understand, the position of the NDC. But I think in this matter, I would hope that they will let Ghanaians be the judges in this matter. Particularly as we get to December 7. I believe all these are going to contribute to the way people will decide in terms of when they have the ballot in their hands. Remember, Alfred, we had 2 instances where the stakes were even much higher than this. When the current president went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled against him. He said, I disagree, but I respect the court's ruling. The country moved on. The former president went to the court. The same thing happened. He disagreed with the court, but, accepted the verdict of the court. I think that is how we should behave as Democrats. And I think that even the Right Honorable Speaker, when I believe he recalls Parliament, perhaps we might hear him say his reading is different from the Supreme Court, but he accepts that. So I would appeal to the NDC, let Ghanaians be the judges in this matter. We have just about 2 weeks. Let them come to the House. Let's see if the numbers are there, so that whatever business that is left, that they can, consensually work on. Let them work on it, and let's end the tenure of this 8th Parliament in peace. And then on December 7, Ghanaians will decide whether the NDC will be majority or the MPP will be majority.
Your time. Thank you so much for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. Executive Director of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Coming up next, let's take the steam on this matter briefly. As we're getting to the implications of this particular decision. That's coming up next here on Ghana Tonight. And we'll get into why this is of matter in the implications of this particular decision by the Supreme Court. That's coming up next here on Ghana Tonight, and especially when it comes to the issue of government business and matters arising. That is our focus. Quickly, Dennis Poberewodam, why is this really of importance? Well,
so like I mentioned earlier, if the cracks are not patched properly, what it means is that if Parliament is recalled, whether by way of emergency recall or if they think that the issues have been resolved enough for them to return to the House, they'll need the numbers from the other side. That's because the question of quorum would always arise for Parliament to either be adjourned or for them to do business. Now, when it comes to the quorum in Parliament, you have one for sitting and then one for decision-making or for voting. If it has to do with sitting, the provision is Article 102 of the 1992 Constitution, which talks about quorum of Parliament. Now, it says that a quorum of Parliament, apart from the person presiding, shall be 1/3 of all the members of Parliament. This is easy to get because when you do the calculation of 275 members of Parliament, you are looking at 92 MPs. So with 92 MPs in the House, they can have a quorum to sit. Where the challenge comes is where they have to vote or to take a decision. Now, that you find that in Article 1041 of the 1992 Constitution. And it reads that, except as otherwise provided in this Constitution, matters in Parliament shall be determined by the votes of the majority of members present and voting with at least half of all the members of Parliament present. This is where the challenge is. For there to be a decision, you need at least half of all the members of Parliament present. Half, we are looking at 138. Now we know the composition of Parliament as it stands now per the Supreme Court ruling is that you have 137 on each side and an independent candidate who is doing business with the MPP. Right. So the MPP side or group can marshal 138 members of Parliament to come and do business and actually vote. Okay. That's if they are able to mobilize all the 138, including those who have already made their intentions known that they want to contest either as independent candidates or on the ticket of the MPP. That's Morrison, Kojo Asante, and then also Mr. now Andres Yama. Yes, he's with them. Indeed. So essentially, if the NDC decides not to take part in parliamentary business, then for the MPP to succeed in doing business and taking a decision, they need all the members of Parliament in the House. And that's if they're going to be able to do that. Because that's also been another issue that Martin Kwebe has been talking about. The inability of the leadership of the MPP to marshal all their members to attend to the business of the House. Because look, we have 24 days to this election day, December 7, and their focus is there as well. They're doing some work in their constituencies, but we'll see how things play out. That leads us to our next issue coming up next year on Ghana Tonight. Here on your Election Command Center, the Electoral Commission of Ghana finally publishes summaries of certified voters register. What's in there for you? We'll tell you exactly what the Electoral Commission said earlier today and matters arising. And we remain your Election Command Center right here. And with this, the one that we've been focusing on quite closely, and that demand that was made by the NDC as well. The Electoral Commission gives some detail, but this is your Election Command Center. The Commission has released the final certified voter register ahead of the 2024 elections on December 7. According to the Commission, a total of over 18.7 million voters have been confirmed as eligible to participate. But before we get into that, this is Jane Mensah, the chair of the Electoral Commission, talking about the Ghana Freedom Party and the disqualification of their candidate, hopefully, who was trying to replace the late Ekua Donkor. It did not happen because they found irregularities and some mistakes in his forms. Take a look.
They detected a number of errors and some illegalities with the form. The candidate's attention was drawn to these errors, and the party was provided an opportunity to correct them. They did that. It was not in our bosom to provide the political party the opportunity to correct some of the illegalities that we found on the form. The commission wrote to the party and to the candidate disqualifying him from contesting the 2024 presidential election. Of errors and some illegalities with the form. The candidate's attention was drawn to these errors, and the party was provided an opportunity to correct them.
Well, that's the Electoral Commission on the Ghana Freedom Party. But then again, we're going to be joined shortly by Dr. Rashid Tanko, is the Deputy Director of IT and Elections for the NDC, on the matter of this information that they asked for. The Electoral Commission has given a summary of the voters register. You recall that sometime last week there was a demand of the NDC. This is it. This is what we do know so far, as put out by the Electoral Commission in a statement earlier today. Total number of voters on the biometric register, 18,640,811. Total number of special voters, 131,478. That's the special voters consisting of we journalists, personnel of the various security agencies, Electoral Commission staff who are going to perform one function or the other on election day. We are going to vote on December 1. Okay? Voters without biometric data, that's 1,870. And then also total number of valid voters. And we'll tell you that shortly, why there's a total number of voters on the biometric register and the total number of valid voters. That's 18,774,159. The reason is that even though their total number of voters on the biometric register is 18.6 million thereabout, you have votes who are coming in also now as special voters. So you add that and then you get the total number of valid voters. Total number of voters on exception list, 33,352. Total number of voters on multiple list, 26,569. Total number of voters on proxy list, 2,141. And the total number of transferred voters you see there as well. The full complement of it is on 3news.com. Dr. Rashid Tanko Computer is Deputy Director of IT and Elections for the NDC. Appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. According to the Electoral Commission, Dr. Rashid Tanko, they're going to go ahead to use the presidential ballot paper as it is, with Ekuadonko's, the late Ekuadonko's picture still on it, correct?
Well, Alfred, let me say good evening to your cherished viewers. Certainly, that was a decision taken at today's IPAC meeting when the Madam Jean Mensah read their decision to us. And then clearly, yes.
Right. So then, what was a question asked about what happens to those who vote for the deceased Ekuadonko? What happens to their votes on election day?
Alfred, it will be counted as a rejected ballot. I mean, it will be counted as rejected. If you thumbprint on Ekuadonko, that one will be described as a rejected ballot, because as it is now, she's not a contestant on this thing. She's deceased, and then because of convenience, they are allowing that to be on it. You know, that's why she said just to save cost, and then because of the cost. I mean, that's what they are looking at. And then, so therefore, they will maintain it. But when you cast your ballot on it, it will be described as a rejected ballot.
I see. That also raises further questions, but we're going to leave it here. So what that means is that the positions will remain the same. NDC will be number 8, NPP will be number 1, and then you'll have the others as well following Nana Bediako, 12. All of that will be there. Same.
Yes, that's it. That's it. I mean, everybody's position maintained. The status quo maintained. I mean, all the ballot papers they are printed since the beginning of the printing of ballot paper will still maintain. Nothing changes. I mean, it means anytime soon we will be ending the printing of the ballot papers. So everything maintains. I mean, everybody maintains his position.
I see. But today we got to know that the Electoral Commission had decided to close some polling stations. I beg your pardon. Polling stations that it had earlier announced that it was opening, over 40,000. Now, did you know about this decision to close these polling stations before today?
Alfred, let me take this opportunity to call on Ghanaians to appreciate the effort of the NDC. I mean, with that NDC, a lot of things were going under the carpet without Ghanaians knowing. I mean, I'm happy you are going through the figures, and this is the product of the NDC, because we requested for the figures, we requested for the summaries. Now, all media houses are running the summaries. Meanwhile, everybody was quiet about it until the NDC raised issues on it. Now, when they came out with the summaries, something startling came out. I mean, startling revelation about polling stations being collapsed without our knowledge. So today, when they finish, we raise issues again about it.
Right.
Because we've been working with the Electoral Commission all along. They've never mentioned about the collapse of such polling stations. Nobody has ever mentioned such a thing to us. And so it means if we hadn't raised this, we wouldn't have known that they have cancelled certain polling stations without our knowledge. And this is serious. I mean, you can't just get up and start collapsing polling stations without the knowledge of major stakeholders like the NDC. In fact, and I was speaking on behalf of all the parties because all of them, it took them by surprise. So we demanded that they should come clean with those polling stations. We want to know which polling station they have collapsed and where they have sent the voters to.
I see. And this is one that we'll also be keeping an eye on, and whether you get answers to that as well. But I do appreciate you connecting with us here. Dr. Asita Computer is Deputy Director of IT and Elections for the NDC. We're back after this quick break. We'll tell you what the people have been talking about. And the countdown is on with some 25 days to election day, December 7. Across all media journal platforms, this is where to be. Stay with us as we build up strongly here on your Election Command Center as we get into the constituencies, more of the constituencies tomorrow morning on the Community Manifesto on New Day, also on 3FM 92.7 with Johnny Hughes and also Helena Piampo for Make a Date across all social media platforms and across all media journal platforms. Thank you so much for staying with us here on Ghana Tonight. My name is Alfred Ocansey. On behalf of the rest of the team, do have a good night.
Ghana Tonight is brought to you by Flamingo Paint. Superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage, simply superior.